Look at what happened then with the decision at the end. So Spurs did ride their luck here. There is an error from Simon Hooper. He does indicate play on then, and then he blows his whistle once Haaland has clipped the ball through.
Sometimes I lose my mind about the referees.
Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribing to the Football Terrace here. It's really important to delve into this, what's being said, and some of the hypocrisy that we face day in, day out when it comes to how the media represents different football clubs in England.
It surprised me for the action. He won a whistle in the moment Erling, go down. And after, like, a referee see how stand up quick and make the pass, and he made the gesture, play on. And when the ball goes for Jack, a whistle. So that does make you feel, oh.
So you see here, Pep Guardiola criticising, having a go at the referees. He's made a number of comments about this. I, by the way, think that's fair. That's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. I think it's fair that Pep has called it out. It's right that Pep calls it out.
Guardiola said, and the City player said, he has just made a mistake.
I think the response from Guardiola and the players has been brilliant. I think it's an absolute shocker. I really do. I think that the amount of times...
It is a shocker of a decision what happened to Man City yesterday. I'm not denying it. It was. I've said it on my own stream, said it on my own... It is. It was a shocking mistake. But for me, why is it's okay for the Man City players to call out the ref? Why is it okay for the Man City players to scream in his face? Why is it okay for Pep Guardiola to call out these poor decisions? But when other managers do it, not only are they charged by the FA, but the mainstream media comes out and calls them dangerous, comes out and calls it repugnant, state that the stench of football is not the poor refereeing, the bad VAR, but in fact, it's people like Mikel Arteta who are building up hate towards referees and making it easy for the public to abuse them. The fans of Arsenal criticise. The fans of Arsenal lambasted as well. Now, I call this out, and I know what some of you have already written. Terry is defending Arsenal. I'm not. I want consistency in how we report, and I want problems in the game addressed. And I'll give you an example here. Jermaine Genius has come out and said the players are right and called it a shocker. At the same time, when Arsenal have complained, he's called them immature and too emotional. I don't understand the difference. We saw this headline here from Oliver Holt towards Arteta. And said the stench. He said, let's all talk loud about this problem. The stench comes from bosses like Mikel Arteta throwing Sunday League refs under the bus. And in this article spoke about how Mikel Arteta calling out the referees, Arsenal fans slamming VAR, players and managers surrounding referees and shouting at them will cause abuse to referees up and down the country. And it is a stench of football and it stinks. Yet does a story about Man City Tottenham mentions, I'll read it out to you. Kulusevski's 90th minute header earned Spurs a point in an Etihad thriller after Jack Grealish looked to have won it. But the late refereeing calls leave champions fuming. So zero mention from Oliver Holt here about the actions of the Manchester City players. Doesn't call the stench of football, doesn't call Pep Guardiola the stench of football. Why the hypocrisy? I've said this for a while and I stand by it. The mainstream media as a dislike, as a hatred, as an agenda against Arsenal. Now, I'm not defending Arsenal because I like them. I'm a Man United fan. I'm defending them because it's an absolute abomination. This from Haaland is being praised by Jermaine Genius, is not being called out by journalists, is not being discussed by the pundits on our biggest channels, but by the way, we all pay for. But when Arsenal do it, they're called a disgrace, they're called dangerous, they're called too emotional, they're called immature. Why the difference? Why is there a fundamental difference on reporting between the two clubs? Now, I don't have an issue with anything City have done. So Man City fans are like, oh, you're coming for us. I'm not attacking you. I think you're right. I'm having a go here at the double standards, the duplicitous reporting, and the fact that they speak out of both sides of their mouths on such a regular basis. It's confusing to me. The hypocrisy and the hatred towards Arsenal, I genuinely mean this. It stinks.
Well below par. It's really disappointing. I feel like we're in a cycle of, to be fair, we're now starting, or the noise against the manager is starting to occur. There is then those same noises that say, well, surely we can't get rid of another manager. We've got to get rid of the players because they're the ones that have got rid of the other managers. And then we turn to the owners, and I'm bored.
He's bored. I get it, Gary. I feel the same.
I've become tired of my own club. I don't want to do their games anymore. I don't want to watch their games anymore. And that is the saddest indictment that you can have of your football club, when you become bored of watching them, when you become tired of watching them. And it's not just me. A couple of people in the last couple of weeks, enough's enough. I know. And the daft thing is, Peter, on Wednesday night, I'll build my whole Wednesday night around watching Manchester United, because that's life. We go watch them again,
That's
don't we?
fanhood.
That's how I feel today. I feel tired.
I get what Gary Neville was saying. I feel identical. I am tired of it. I don't think this manager is the right guy for the job. But I also don't believe that sacking him will fix us. I believe we have to move the players on. But I know the club and the owners, as it stands right now, are never going to sanction it. So I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. It feels like whatever we do, we jump out of boiling water and into the fireplace. So I understand the frustrations. And for me, it is such a damning thing to say about Man United. And listen, I've criticised the manager. I've criticised Rashford this weekend, and I think rightfully so. I've criticised the owners many times in the past 17 to 18 years, especially in the last 3 to 4. It's become an even bigger thing. But I am at a point where I feel exhausted talking about Man United, because we can pull on the small problems. We can pull on the problems that are relatively easier to fix. But there is no belief that things are going to improve in the medium to long term. So therefore, it becomes a tiring thing. The problem that you have, though, is that when you become tired and jaded talking about a particular subject matter and pushing for real systemic change, when you become tired of doing that, it becomes a lot easier for the people causing the problem, i.e. the board. And that's something that we cannot allow to happen. But I want to know if Man United fans relate to what Gary Neville is saying here, because for me, he's absolutely ripped the club to pieces, maybe inadvertently, with what he's had to say right there. Let me know.
I'll try and, without waffling. You said we can talk about Martial later. I think you look no further than Martial for what that club is all about. I used to write in the Sunday Times. It must be 4 or 5 years ago. I wrote in the Sunday Times, this has to be Martial's last chance saloon moment. They've given him another contract, and he didn't deserve one. So by mentioning his name, what I mean is, they have, for a decade, made consistently poor decisions in the footballing matters. The most important thing you have to get right at a football club is your recruitment. And then on top of that, who you think we can afford to sell.
It's interesting here, because Graham Souness is not the only pundit this weekend to call out and speak about Anthony Martial. And it's frustrated me seeing Martial be criticised, because I don't think he's been our worst player in recent weeks. I believe he's often been an easy target in the past. But at the same time, for me, I know we're never going to get the very best Martial back. And we're never going to get Martial to get to the peak that we expected him to 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. However, I do understand where a lot of these journalists are coming from. And I think if you're someone who loves Martial, ignore the fact they're talking about him. They're not talking about him, the player or the person per se. They're talking about the fact that somebody that isn't of the standard to get you back to winning Premier Leagues was not only for one reason or another. Whether we've ruined him, whether it's injuries, it doesn't really matter what the reason is. We all know where he's at in his career. The fact that he's still here and leading the line for us demonstrates how poorly run we are as a football club. Where I actually am calling out these pundits isn't for the low-hanging fruit of don't mention Martial's name. It's when the likes of Graham Souness for the past decade have sat in the Sky Sports studios, TalkSPORT studios, and many, many people like him. Why do they, when they're often talking about Man United, do they ignore how we're run? Do they ignore our recruitment? Do they ignore the renewals of the poor contracts? Do they ignore the chopping and changing of managers and the different directions and projects that we've gone in? That always gets ignored until you get to this sort of stage of a manager's situation where he's under pressure and they start to talk about the Glazers, how we're run, our recruitment. I find it heavily frustrating that these are not conversations that I had earlier within the cycles of these managers, because it's all true. This doesn't negate from Ten Hag doing a terrible job at the moment. It doesn't negate from other players like Bruno and Rashford, whoever it may be, from being criticised, because everyone's got a different view on who should have been sold and who he should have invested in. But my kind of view is this: there probably isn't very many players left in this Man United squad that when Sir Jim Ratcliffe comes in, if the manager's sacked and somebody new is here, there's probably barely a single soul who you actually look at and go, you know what, in 3 or 4 years' time, I still want to see that person here. The vast majority should be moved out very quickly. But we won't do that. And it won't be picked up upon straight away by the media. They'll wait a year, 2, 3, then talk about it. But it's really interesting watching Gary Neville and Souness destroy Man United here, because I don't think they're attacking individual people. I don't think they're attacking Martial. I think this is more about the way the club is run, the situation that it finds itself in needs to be the main focus. And I've only been saying that for 17, 18 years, and it's good to see them do it, but my God, they're late to the party. Listen, as ever, people, do me a favor and hit the like button. Please subscribe.